Hello, viewers, a good afternoon to you all. Well, Article 79 of the Constitution, the Local Government Act, amongst other so many laws, prescribe the theory of the social contract that the government has with its people that is hinged on the aspect of representation. And therefore, each time a seat falls vacant, there is need for a replacement. So as we move towards the Serere by-election, we shall take time to evaluate what has been the trend in the by-elections of the past. And of course, you'll recall the Omoro by-election, the Soroti East by-election, among others, Kayunga. So we shall evaluate what trends have they taken and what do we expect from Serere County. But also in the second phase, we know that political parties have taken special interest in visiting Mengo. We shall understand what exactly inspires them, what motivates them to visit Mengo. Is there is there an invisible power that we don't see on the surface of things? And to put this into perspective, this afternoon is a panel of distinguished citizens of this country. And from my immediate left is someone who you've seen on this show before, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, who is a UPC ideologue and a media personality. Joseph, thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here, and it's fantastic being with my best friend, Sarah. And of course, for the first time with my big brother, Gregory. I'm delighted.
Is it the first time?
Actually, on this program.
Ah.
Yeah, yes.
On this program.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, next to Joseph is Dr. Sarah Bireete. Sarah is a lawyer and also the executive director of Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Moses, and good afternoon, viewers.
All right, and the guest today is retired General Mugisha Muntu, a man of so many titles, but for today, he's our guest, and also he's the founding member of the Alliance for National Transformation.
And president.
And president still?
Yeah, he's the leader.
Oh,
No.
Relinquished. Yeah.
He's relinquished,
Thank
yeah.
you, Moses.
Yes.
All right. News.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me,
Yeah.
and good evening, dear viewers.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, let me just start with you. Looking at the nature of by-elections, the UPC has never participated in any of them. Have you relinquished your responsibility of political participation in this country?
Just as I got it wrong there on my brother Gregory, you've just got it wrong. Actually, we have, but not in recent past, partly because of the unfortunate mess in which we are. So to that extent, yes, not in recent past. But the Soroti East by-election, UPC was there, by the way. And yes, our candidate was amongst the best performing, holding other factors constant. But in terms of winning, I think the last by-election we won was in Oyam South, the seat which is now occupied by Betty Amongi, who is sometimes UPC, but sometimes NRA. So that was won by Ishe Oto. He was then young Ishe Oto, over 10, 12 years ago, and it was one of the sweetest victories. He was young, he was sharp, and many of us were very excited. And in UPC's case, we thought it was an opportune moment for us to regroup and reorganize. Unfortunately, that did not happen. That said, I think in recent times, you would say, and I wonder, what is it with by-elections? I think you referred to Moro. Possibly one of the things you're talking about is this thing about children inheriting seats from their parents. I am a Democrat, but I am not sure whether, from some of my experiences beyond the boundaries of Uganda, it's necessarily a good practice, particularly in a country like this, which is a young democracy, where we are encouraging a process not only of democratic principles and cultures evolving and emerging and strengthening and concretizing, but also encouraging alternative competitive culture within political parties and organizations. So my opinion is that if a seat falls vacant for the reasons you've constitutionally given, political parties, respective political parties, including political parties of the candidates in this case who may have demised or for whatever reasons how the seats became vacant, these matters return to members, usually starting from branches to constituencies, and that the active engagement by members of the party there amongst themselves, usually in that constituency and further beyond in areas in countries where it does not matter whether you come from the particular area, candidates emerge. That, in my opinion, encourages opportunities for different opinions and contestations within same political parties and organizations to emerge, it encourages a situation in which the constituents are given an opportunity to test alternative views, even if it's from within the same political parties. And of course, much better where a by-election occurs and for some reason you've ended up with a candidate from the same political party, and there's an opportunity for citizens in that country, in that area, to seek to use the by-election to alter, to have a different representation in terms of members of parliament. I must also say that usually by-elections, Gregory, in most other democracies, litmus tests for governing political parties, where the public tend to use to hit back at them. In fact, in stable democracies, very rarely do sitting governments win by-elections. But unfortunately, because our system is such that it is either NRA, NRM, or nobody, it's not surprising that, and shocks me, that when opportunities emerge, you would think that this would be few tokens for Mr. Museveni to allow us and others also to enjoy. And these guys put and focus all national resources and fight for it as if at the end of that by-election, the state, and in this case, State House, would cease to exist if they don't. So we see the violence, and I think our expert here is Gregory on the floor, in terms of the field, whether it's within the political parties that he was a party or a member, like in FDC and others, or indeed working collectively as alternative oppositions. Maybe it's Bugiri or Arua and others, where opposition parties come and say, this, because it's a single election, we will focus our resources, we will focus our energy, and actually expose the system. But maybe it's the more reason why Museveni now goes to the checkers and then gets mad about it, because he really has a point to use to win. Which means, in my opinion, is a manifestation of absence yet of genuine democracy, or even a startup of a democratic process. Is extremely unfortunate. But what are my summary again? The business of children or spouses of political positions, not leadership, taking positions in by-elections, to me is, in my opinion, anti-democratic. And particularly where we pick novices from nowhere and then say, okay, for sympathy we give you. It's not surprising that people then begin to think these are entitlements of families. No, at parliamentary levels, if it were in my party and a competent member of parliament passes, I think it is fair enough to say that it is a child in that family, because this person has done great jobs. Yes, that child in the family should actually finish school, graduate, become an evident, responsible public citizen, like a head teacher, possibly retire, possibly engage in politics, including becoming a branch chairperson of a local party, show evidence that they're in Serere when there was famine, they mobilize and organize the mangoes, like Museveni instructs people when they're hungry, as villagers did some kind of initiatives, build some kind of capacity and ability when there's a demonstration in Kampala to support teachers, and that, this is a young citizen who, in the likely event that they became a legislator, they represent the interests of Serere, they have an idea about poverty, but above all, there's evidence that they can do cross-party work, and so therefore add some, value into parliament, but above all, become scrutineers of in parliament, which is basically the role of the legislator.
All right, thank you. Jen, let me just get to you after this. And the question is, if you look at Tomorrow County, you look at Soroti East, you look at Kayunga, the NRM has continued to enjoy the victory in so many of these by-elections. I don't know, does that augur something in your mind now that you're moving towards participating in Serere County? I mean, isn't the outcome predetermined already, considering the past outcomes?
Well, when you look at the by-elections which happened after 2006, and the ones which took place after 2011, and even after 2016, much as the regime's focus has always been in manipulating the electoral process, during general elections, because they are backed by the state and all the resources that the state has, you'd find that they would have more advantage than the opposition parties. The opposition parties would find themselves quite overstretched when it comes to organizing and participating in conducting campaigns and management of the whole voting process, including vote protection. So many times you'd find that the regime would easily manipulate in quite a number of areas. Now, in by-elections, when you trace, you'll find that by-elections which happen in those three different times, that the opposition used to win the majority of them.
Yes.
Why? Because there would be advantage for those of us who are in opposition parties, because the area would be smaller, and therefore it would have advantages in us concentrating resources, human as well as financial and logistical. And if it was at a district level, for example, or a constituency, because it would be smaller. And that in itself would also start building momentum for the opposition. Because if you found like there were about 4 or 5 and would have won like 3 or 4, it would build momentum to the extent that by the time we went to general election, the whole population would be fired up. And also it would have built confidence and also hope in the population that, oh, it is possible the opposition can overwhelm the regime. The regime at that time, much as they also tried to manipulate the by-elections, because there are many where it will be like warfare. I know a number of them, like Ujiri, like Jinja, like Arua, there would be battles. Nevertheless, because we would concentrate effort, resources, and take advantage of the frustration of the population, we would win. And at that time, they had not gone to the extent to which they have now gone. But the weaker the regime gets, the more they lose the ground, the more they fear the building of momentum. So they don't want to take any chance. So now they have chosen, looking at 21 to now, not to allow any by-election to be taken by the opposition, more or less. Because when they have pulled all the plugs, to the extent that they can even just announce. That also happened actually in 2021, where they now took a stance that, you know what, it doesn't matter whether there is everybody, they have got
The vote.
the DRA forms, and the Electoral Commission clearly sees that so and so has won. They have given instruction. They have given the instruction some of these by-elections to simply announce, and then you go to court. They did that even in 2021. Because they've also infiltrated, unfortunately, the judicial service, judicial system. And when you know what is happening in that area, that's what can really cause one to look at the country and believe that we're really going almost down the drain. Because in that regard, there also used to be hope that when they manipulate the process, that there would be a chance within the judicial processes. That area is also very, very basically compromised, that area, when you look at the trends that we are in. So that's where we are at. You look at what happened in Kasese, Songora South, what happened in Soroti East, what happened in Kayunga, what happened in Omoro. Therefore, the question would be, why bother? Why participate? At least for us in Alliance for National Transformation, our view is, you know what, we shouldn't give what the regime wants. Because in doing all the kind of things they do, there's also a motive to create a sense of hopelessness and frustration in the population to the extent that simply people give up and say, you know what, it's a waste of time. Now, our view is the only way you can maintain hope, even in such a situation, is you keep engaging. Because the one thing that can happen in a country is to find a state of total hopelessness. It's like at the level of human beings. The moment any human being loses hope in life, they start dying. Similarly, society, even amidst the darkest moments in the state of a country, there must be those who, once they recognize that hope is a critical factor in whatever dark situation that there is, that they must keep doing the things which maintain hope. That's one. That's why we are participating, for example, in this by-election. But also to build, because during the electoral process, regardless of whatever comes up, you engage with the population. You disseminate a message that you have. Then you also take that opportunity and build and strengthen yourselves organizationally in an area like that. 3, we're also driven by the understanding that in life, many aspects of life are struggles. It's not only in politics, even those who engage in warfare, those who engage in business. So that even in the most difficult of times, the resilient are the ones who ultimately succeed. Success, you must be ready, psychologically, organizationally, to keep fighting, regardless of whatever challenges you face. Because at the end of it all, when you are resilient, eventually you succeed. So we are not about to give up because of what the regime wants. Because whatever they do is cause frustration, is cause a sense of hopelessness, and people simply give up. And when people give up, then it plays in the hands of the regime. That's why in the times when we engage, those are the very reasons why we keep engaging. 4, there's also at the individual level, some of us, much as we are in politics, of course, politics, mostly concentration is on using political strategies and political tactics. But at the individual level, there are also those of us who are believers. Those of us who are believers are driven by the understanding that you walk by faith, not by sight. Because in life, if you only apply sight, there are things which will terrify you to a point where you can easily surrender or give up. But there are those of us who move by faith because we are looking at the end state. You know that however difficult any situation is, victory is always at the end. So what you do is you engage to the extent that you can at a human level. The rest you leave to God.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of victory, Doctor, if you look at the NRM structures, they have a vibrant youth league, they have an organized women's league, they have an entrepreneurs league, an elders league, and all these structures purportedly go up to the grassroots, the village level. So when they come out to win by elections, year in, year out, should it be of surprise to us if you compare their structures vis-a-vis the structures of other political parties? Shouldn't their win at times be inevitable and that the opposition only cries foul?
Yeah, Moses, on face value, it's not surprising that your generation sees a vibrant party. At my age and the little experience I've had, there is no NRM without UPDF. And I can substantiate. I know that's a shocking statement, but if you removed the help that NRM gets from violence using state machinery, you would not even win 30% of elections in this country. So forget the cosmetic structures. Yes, you have, on face value, a seemingly active entrepreneurship league, because businesses don't want witch hunt and victimization that the state puts on the business owners that support opposition. The heavy taxation, fictitious fraud, just get them out of business. The arrests you see in town, most of them. For example, the fight against corruption in this country, where the state has interest, is mainly to eliminate people who don't support the regime, mainly. So for one who is an NRM, corruption can be discussed and forgiven. And I'm using just that as an example to show you that there is no party. Even some people today, and you need to wait from 7 to go, who seem to be NRM vigilantes or so much supportive, get their comments after. They will say they were just protecting themselves and their existence. And we have seen that in many authoritarian regimes. So cowards tend to play in the game. And if we did not have this pretense and cowardice, then we would not be at the extent of authoritarianism that we are in. So there is no vibrance in NRM to talk about. Even when you go for NRM primaries, I have seen in my district, Bushenyi, all the people who are opposition, whatever, and you know them.
Yeah.
If you go to my LC2,
Yeah.
where I come from, they are all opposition people. But people are like, I don't want people to knock on my door that I'm opposition. So let us be here. When you talk to them and say, but the governance, I say, but you, my friend, we don't want to be whipped. So let us try to play along until when you people reach somewhere. So that is the vibrance you are seeing. But I can assure you that today, if NRM joined opposition, more than half of the so-called members will run away because their conscience does not belong there. It's just convenience. Having said that, and sorry to shock you.
Father.
No, it's okay.
So having said that, the three manifestations in our by-elections. One is the complete failure of the Electoral Commission to discharge its function as envisaged in Article 60 to 65 of the Constitution. Our Constitution is very clear. They do not, the framers of the Constitution never envisaged the situation where we do regular elections. But everybody in NRM will tell you, but you have a regular elections. That's not what the Constitution demands for. The Constitution demands for free and fair regular elections. So once you remove the substantial element of free and fair, and you start justifying thuggery in democracy, that you have regular elections, where is it written that we need regular elections? Exercise of stand up, sit down, and you tell people that is democracy. Let me use 3 examples. There was an election, a by-election in the Kisoro area. Bichimbili North.
Yes.
Was that an election? Go to Kayunga. Was that an election? All opposition agents were arrested. All candidates beaten. The returning officer had, even after all that violence, the Prime Minister is captured on video distributing money. That makes her a criminal. Those are serious electoral offenses. The returning officer, the young girl, had the re-election, real results in one hand, and then she's told to read this one. And she didn't know where. As she reads, you see somebody looking for the ground to swallow them. Is that what we signed up for as a country? Absolutely. The chairman electoral commission is shown a booklet, predict. He did not even deny. And he says, got police, a chairman, electoral commission. People are saying, what have you done? What is the source of this? And look, sheep in the cameras. Really? Why do we waste taxpayers' money? I always make a painful reference to the dictatorship of Idi Amin. It's not what Ugandans deserved. But he did not pretend to be democratic. He was who he was. I condemn the pretense.
Okay, can you speak about pretense with Mr. Joseph?
No, I was coming. So one failure is to organize elections.
Yes.
As envisaged in the constitution. And it clearly manifests in that small place of a by-election. A by-election is one area where if we had any decency as a society, then you would have electoral commission saying we shall have a normal election. Even if it was political pressure, if Justice Byabakama had any decency left in him, he would tell the president and say, you have majority numbers in parliament, leave me. My name is in the gutters. But he doesn't even have that. The second element that we see is an apathetic citizenry. Look at what's happening in Serere. Women parading, we want our son, the seat is for our son, as if it is part of mourning. They have extended, mourning emotions to democratic seats. I mean, what kind of people are we? Dying is normal. Being born and dying is normal. And leaders are no exception. So it's unfortunate that a leader dies just the same way it is unfortunate that families lose people on a daily basis. So there is no exception. So you have people pretending to extend mourning to ring fence elected seats. Very pathetic culture we are. Habit. It's not even a culture. Habit we are developing in this country. So the third element that is extremely embarrassing is the conduct of the police and the army. A small by-election of an authoritarian regime that is not threatened by numbers. It has excessive numbers in terms of pushing the agenda. There is nothing at threat when it comes to NRM. But see the madness in the field. Is that the organized party you're talking about? Please.
Okay, Joseph.
Outside power, it will be normal.
Joseph, just my question is, the UPC and Democratic Party now have voluntarily chosen to have, how should I put it, an understanding with the NRM. All right? And perhaps the NRM continues to enjoy support because they benefit from the support that they get from the UPC and now Democratic Party. I don't know. Is the UPC contributing towards NRM's, victory in this by-election, but also that general stay in power?
I think you raised a very important point. But before I come to that, I just want to say that Sarah is being very generous. I think my brother Gregory has hinted that in the event that any formal elections do take place today, the 50-50 or so thereabout, it is a normal, free, fair, open, competitive elections in which every citizen has been, decultured, that the army will not whip them, the police will not whip them, Muhozi youth will not whip them. It's very unlikely that this NRA regime, as it is, would score anything beyond 30% across the country. And 30% is still a very high number for a regime like this for the 37 years and the mess they've subjected our country. But to their credit, because there are many young people in the country who don't know any other, and part of the psychological game they've played on that is either them or other, they will still possibly get about 30 in the very extreme. But I can tell you, it would be worse. And Museveni actually knows that it would almost certainly be worse, possibly 25% or less. I am absolutely confident that the event that NRA Museveni stops today, tomorrow, of a 5-year period, it would be an organization as wiped off as anything else you can refer to, perhaps the former old Communist Party of Cuba. Back to Uganda People's Congress and DP, you're absolutely right that actually part of the reason why Museveni continues with the impunity he actually does is because of the weaknesses of the two independent political parties. But to suggest a UPC association with the NRA, with my right hand, I reject it in Jesus' mighty name, because there is no UPC association with Museveni as a political party. There is Jim McKenna and his wife Betty, and one or two individuals with their very dubious, interesting deals, but personal deals not in any association with UPC.
But
For information,
this is your party leader that you're talking about.
Jimmy is not my party leader. Jimmy, for information, and you need to know, you're a young lawyer, but you're a fantastic TV presenter. Jimmy is not party leader. The Court of Appeal ruled against Jimmy, 2020, September 7th, that Jimmy is not the elected leader of the party, and that was settled then. The problem the party faces, and some leaders in the party, is being able to effect, taking the next stage, which is basically seeking to evict Jimmy from Uganda House, which of course is a complicated thing because he was occupying Uganda House. The way he went to Uganda House, remember, he broke into Uganda House pushing Olara Otunu by force. Because the party headquarters and because he's got the privilege of having Milton Obote's name as Obote's son, many party members and many members of the public continue to associate his authority and leadership with the party. A difficult thing for the party, but credit to Museveni, who are the forces of the process, makes it very difficult. So basically, there's nothing. No, UPC has got no association with the NRA, and the UPC a UPC that I would lead tomorrow would have absolutely nothing officially associated with Museveni. And the UPC for which I am a member has got absolutely nothing. And the UPC Delegates Conference, the National Council, Gregory and Sarah knows this, in which I would participate as a senior leader of the party. I would ensure, not only would I vote no, but I would ensure the majority of the members would vote no. And I'm coming from various meetings this morning and early part of this afternoon, and I can tell you the majority of UPC members have got such huge pain and sickness for the fact that Obote's son and a few individuals are bringing and continue to maintain that image that UPC has got any semblance of association with this rather terrible regime. So to that extent, yes. No, I think the hope for this country is not lying. It should not only lie with the UPC and DP. It should lie with the emergent political leaders and parties like that of Gregory. It should lie with younger people like yourselves. It should be the burden responsible UPC and myself and DP and others to focus on you, the younger generation, to expose the froth around NRA and to work together to link the points that Sarah was suggesting. What happens in normal elections? What happens in democracies? What should happen in this country? The conversation we're having off air that is working together to beat this nonsense called fear that Museveni has successfully painted on the minds of our people, that without him, nothing can happen, that more Ugandans mobilize and organize so that we make it impossible for him to play games at Serere and to try and do some of the things that Grigor was saying that we successfully managed to do much earlier. How are we able to do that, particularly to break through the powers of the military, rather sharper today than it was 10, 15 years ago, and the powers of the police? I do not know, but that's a matter for consideration. And usually young people like you have got more energy to be able to do this. So more young people come up and claim back your country, claim back your parties, and claim back the democracy. Some of us, the older leaders, we're just here to give you ideas and to tell you that actually without NRA and without Museveni, this country is possible. So I think that really, by and large, is what we need to do. But I think we need also that in situations like Serere, we should continue to refocus strategically as we did 20 or so years ago, seeing where there is perhaps one opposition party strong and backing that opposition political party and putting all our resources and energies together and making sure that we create a semblance of impossibilities for Museveni to rig, quote, win. I think actually, Gregory and Sarah, even if actually Museveni continues to do these things and, quote, win, actually, my own considered opinion, like the mess and the nonsense that he did in Soroti, they actually come out actually much more humiliated and injured. They have the numbers in the crude National Assembly, but in terms of public opinion, actually they lose substantially. So I think we should not lose hope. We should organize, make it difficult for them, get our television and radio cameras and figures and microphones down there, make sure the majority of our people see the froth that they present, and also show them the possibility. Because some of the things that Sarah is saying, that the young returning officer has got facts and figures and people see it. They've got the results, but that demystifies the artificial power that any represents that they are powerful, that they are powerful, that they're popular, that they're masked, that they've got a possibility to vote. My view is that we should actually organize more as a democratic opposition with one voices. In particular places, as I said, I repeat, decent winning candidates for the democratic opposition, do the grassroots stuff there and make it harder for them to be able to do so. How, again, I repeat, maybe it's a bit of a boring thing, how we deal with the psyches of the security services is neither here nor there. Sarah knows more than I do there. She's saying that I may be dreaming, but I am a man full of hope. Sarah, what?
Thank you. And General, I want to just pick it up from where Joseph has stopped and the issue of organization. I think it was last week or the week before, I saw the ANT unveil the Honorable Alaso as their candidate. And I want to quote you, General. You said that you are in engagements with other political parties to see to it that they can really support behind the Honorable Alaso. Not so many days after that, we saw the FDC declare their own candidate. Yes. So isn't Joseph Ochieno's idea of an organized, united opposition, is it wishful thinking?
Of course, it would be desirable in areas where there is a strong candidate from any of the parties to be supported by other parties, and to coordinate effort. But even when that doesn't happen, to me, at a personal level, I never get so disappointed to the extent where you find that you now start building grievance against the other parties. Because the parties will consider a number of things. At times, they want to engage on the ground as a way of building their organizational capabilities.
Yes.
At times, they want to hold ground if they have been in that area. And most times, at least from what I have noticed, the population always, you can find like 2-3 parties in the opposition have fielded. But the population tends to rally around one. That's even at the national level. It also a number of times happens at the ground level. When there's a popular candidate, that's where majority of the people will gravitate and organize around that. So at the end of the day, personally, I don't see any problem in regard to that, as long as we keep building our capabilities. Where it is possible for us to field one candidate, if we are able to coordinate effort and also build relationships that enable us to understand that primarily the main focus will be to oust this regime, then we would be successful in doing that. But even when that doesn't happen, if we can only avoid generating acrimony, to me that is the biggest problem that I have within us as opposition. If you are able to coordinate effort and do something together, that's the best case scenario. But in the event that you are not able to do that, then continue and do whatever you are doing, but don't allow yourselves to be sucked into a state of acrimony. To me, as long as each party is building and doing whatever it believes to be the right thing, and it is not engaging in any form of acrimony with the other opposition parties, I have no problem with that.
Just shortly, do you think that the FDC is perhaps witch hunting you? Because the Democratic Party has not, come out, and neither has NUP, neither has UPC, but the Honorable Erato was declared not less than a week after ANT.
Well, every party has got a way in which they are able to do analysis and reach whatever conclusions they reach. And what we try to do in Alliance for National Transformation is whatever any other party does, whether it is in terms of the strategy they are pursuing, whether it is at an operational level like engaging in a by-election, what we do is we try the best we can. We desist from doing anything that will provoke antagonism. Because we recognize that one of the best tools of building cohesion in the opposition is to maintain a state of harmony, to keep focusing on the primary things and not allow yourselves to be sucked into secondary considerations that cause a state of acrimony. That sucks. It sucks the energies out of you. It creates a state of antagonism and also creates a state of hopelessness within the population. Because there are many people who want to see change. So they would want to see an alternative, credible opposition forces. Now, if you degenerate into fights, one, they want change. They see the regime is doing so many things to hang on to power. And they see you in the opposition at each other's necks. If there's anything that can be frustrating, it is that. So we spend more time trying to do things in a manner that enables us to avoid any sort of acrimony within the opposition parties as Alliance for National Transformation. But also, too, we recognize that parties, depending on whatever internal dynamics they have, can make a choice. What right or wrong, that's not the issue. To me, as far as I'm concerned. Because FDC must have reasons why they are fielded. Maybe it's because TESO used to be a stronghold of FDC. Maybe they want to maintain their political base in TESO. I don't know. Whatever reason why they are fielded, it is their legitimate right.
General, lastly on this.
In as long as, at least for us in NT, and we'll keep on communicating with our leaders, not allow any situation to provoke them to say, because it's not a right, that it's not an automatic thing that even if you have, when you believe you have a strong candidate, that necessarily others will support you. It shouldn't be.
Can I compliment him
It shouldn't be taken for granted.
Sure, yeah.
And two, to me, maintaining harmony in the opposition is the most important thing that we should exercise. To the extent that that is being done, at least we are doing everything humanly possible to maintain that in Alliance for National Transformation. As we speak, we really don't have any state of antagonism between us and NUP. We don't have any state of antagonism with the JEMA, nor with FDC, much as a number of us who are in NT separated with the FDC. We ensure we don't provoke any fight. We avoid any provocation, avoid any state of conflict.
Yeah. Yes.
Just suitably pressed by the presentations in this context by Grigory. Just to say this, that actually in normal democracies, voters themselves actually, the issue would not be why are you also fielding. Voters themselves would actually do what they call tactical voting. And you'll be amazed how they'll gravitate around one candidate, usually either because of the nature and personality of that particular candidate, regardless of the political party in many cases, or the values of that political party as an alternative. It does not matter sometimes even if that political party had the strongest base in that constitution. So normally that happens, and that's why, I can't wait for us to rebuild Uganda as a democratic nation, because actually in democracies, some of these things are very fantastic experiences. And of course, some of the experiences elsewhere. And just a quick one to say that, look, actually, it is true that even in UPC, while I don't know where the candidate for UPC would be picking on their nomination forms at this material time because of the leadership question we've got, I also know that there's some young guys there who are very actively seeking to have a UPC candidate represented down there. And if that happens, it will be very difficult for me to do otherwise but to actively support them against and to any other person. But what do you do in the situation? What Gregor is saying, you focus on issues. What is it that your candidate is providing? What is it that your political party is providing? And in this particular case, in TESO, what is it that NRA is giving to TESO that after the death of that legislator, you desperately want to replace it? It should really be along those lines. And if we actually to do it openly and freely, democratically, it's an open thing, notwithstanding a possibility of not supporting one candidate, there's no reason why we don't harmoniously look and simply say the big obstacle here is this carcass called NRA at a national level.
If you allow me to add on something
sure.
in that regard. Actually, what we do in Alliance for National Transformation, In a number of cases, we never wait for opposition parties when like a by-election, even in a general election. When we do analysis, and in a number of cases, I think there are about 6 cases where we have done that. We'll do analysis and find that by our involvement, it could lead to loss of a seat that is in the hands of an opposition party already, on our own, without engaging even with the party
In question,
represent in question. We've decided not to fill.
You withdrew with your interest, yes. Yeah.
Well,
A number of cases. But we are a party that doesn't go into a number of things. We are focused, we are disciplined, we think and act long term.
yeah,
Eventually, it will influence the culture that we are trying to build
in this
in
country.
this country.
Thank you. Doctor, the issue of succession politics, and Joseph did allude to it earlier on. The NRM has been at the forefront of receiving accusations that they are orchestrating this whole succession politics. But the NRM Secretariat has come out to state that they are in support of the party flag bearer, particularly for the Serere County by-election, and they shall not support the son to the late. Does this particular endeavor by the NRM vindicate them from the accusations of Joseph of succession politics?
Well, you see, one act does not constitute a culture of the party. The president and the senior party members during the Omoro by-elections are on record have said that if Jacob Bolanya, may he rest in peace, has died, there is no need why other people should be fighting. Let the son complete the term. This is their own statement, official. So when the opposite become a culture.
Yeah,
I think in this particular election, they are looking at the party flag bearer because the incumbent, although he was associated with NRM, was an independent. But you need to ask yourself, given the trend they've set previously, the father has, starting with this small girl, Proscovia Elongeti in Katakwi, who was dragged literally in a school uniform to Parliament. And now she has disappeared because they messed up her life. Yes. So that's when it started. This one has died, don't fight with the family. This one has died. They've set that trend over time. One act alone cannot exonerate them. Something they've done in almost all by-elections. And one act cannot exonerate them.
But okay, is it
maybe they've seen, no, we need to look at the internal dynamics within NRM. One is that they are fighting a battle between the father and son. Already, NRM has been on a campaign trail prematurely between members of one family. We have a standby generator, the generator is dead. We have a standby. So they could be trying to move away from that kind of generator is dead. It could be the ghost chasing them. So, and the party has been, we have already a flag bearer for 2026. Then you have the historicals, you have the vice president launching billboards, then the Tovaku main. Really, NRM is in chaos internally. So they could be fighting that ghost of a dead generator in what you think they are exonerating themselves.
Joseph, just the issue of opposition unity. Because I want to speak to you because you aspire, or yes, I think that's the word, you aspire to lead the UPC. I don't know.
Maybe before Joseph comes in, I think it's important for the viewer to know that building political parties needs a consistent following of principles set within a party. So if you have set a principle of choosing flag bearers, holding elections, when you start to handpick, then you distort that, and it does not help. It's one of the challenges we have in our struggle to build strong political parties in this country.
Okay, fair enough. Joseph, just to build my question, that as someone who aspires to lead the UPC, the question is, for example, now that FDC and also FDC and ANT have declared the candidates. Do you think it is right for them to, at this point, seek the goodwill of NUP? Do you think that this is the time where they should be in the backdoor engagements, trying to engage the Honorable Chagudani so that they can throw his weight behind them? Or do you anticipate the NUP to also come up with their own candidate? I don't know. Speaking in hindsight, how could this unfold?
I think that it's a bit of a contradiction, but I think in part, both Gregory, Sarah, and indeed, I have alluded to that in response, that in many cases, and particularly Gregory put it quite well, that it would tend to depend on the circumstances of the political party. By the way, very interestingly, this is official. I was the one with one or two people who pushed Mama Miria into compelling one or two others, including Chris Opoka and others, who had a particular view about an independent candidate when Okule Park, Dr. Park passed, who was then an FDC at the time, to say that UPC must field a candidate at the time, Gregory. And I said so because, one, this was a traditional UPC, a parliamentary seat, and apparently at the barrio, many of the mourners, including people who were supporting Dr. Park, had said that, well, the seat would be a UPC seat. Immediately after that, certain people went for deals, including people who would have emerged as possibly a candidates, but we don't want to go into that. And so we knew it, and I was aware actually, I was doing some of my research in London, and we said, no, we need to have a candidate, and this is the UPC area, but also one of the things that Gregory is saying, and I hope I'm not going too far, I mean, on and on and on. By-elections, actually, in democracies, notwithstanding the challenges we face with NRA today, are opportunities for parties to train. So sometimes, you know, it's opportunities to recruit, it's opportunities to market and sell themselves, and in many cases, sometimes it's also to test opinion. So actually, by-elections have got so many advantages and reasons why political parties should participate, regardless of whether or not they're going to win. At the moment, this is plan B, dealing with a desperate situation. How do we get rid of this regime? So party leaders will take various kinds of considerations. In fact, Gregory talked about TESO as being predominantly FDC. I would argue that is actually our traditional UPC stronghold, meaning that you'll find maybe UPC and DP, and FDC battling about these things that, well, is it FDC you guys came and took a bit of our space? This is our traditional historical space. So UPC members particularly would also have very strong view that would push towards the leadership, that maybe if you decided that, well, we're having a conversation here, there'll always be mixed opinion. But you're right, at the end of the day, leadership is also about taking difficult decisions and guiding in situations, and you'll take considerations, like Gregory says, what are the circumstances prevailing at the time. For then your question at the moment, yeah, it would be rather cheeky, it would be a difficult one. Do you now go back and say, okay, let's consult with the others and you come and support us? You know, you'd argue that
because there are those who have not fielded candidates as yet. So
yeah,
they're neither here nor there.
No, precisely. But as I said, why are you then saying you're coming to us, and on what grounds? No, but no, the two parties that have fielded candidates have got every right to say that, well, you know, UPC, why don't you support us? DP, I know in this case, NUP, why don't you support us? Or maybe why don't we galvanize amongst ourselves? It will be difficult because there are already now two established opposition parties. So which one, whom do you support? Do you support ANT candidate, and for what reasons? Or do you support FDC candidate? Or is there a conversation that says, okay, we have one of the two? Or maybe an opinion emerges and simply says that, well, let a DP candidate come in and stand, and all of us, the other two, will stand down. I think that is a discussion that, you know, for the moment, it's neither here nor there. I think the more important point is what we've said before, that not only do I aspire, but in the likely event that the judicial process takes its fair course and the courageous judges are out there on my matter in the court, it should be ruled any moment from now that I'm actually the leader of UPC. And the event that I am, Gregory, you and I, you know, as brothers, will be working very swiftly, very speedily together to join, to encourage other political opposition leaders so that we galvanize and strengthen the work of the democratic opposition, the work of polity broadly, the culture of inclusion and inclusiveness and working together, and the culture of beauty of democracy, where it's a competition of ideas rather than boxing each other, and to make sure that possibly a future by-election, maybe in the next several months that it happens, may be able to have more than this kind of conversation. And it's also possible that party leaders meet over tea and say, guys, there is this thing which has happened now in Serere. What do you think? And maybe they debate and say, well, my candidate is strong down there, or my political party has got this base there. What is strategically right for us? And then they merge out of this. One of the reasons why we have this is that, I'm pushing it, maybe there is insufficient cohesion at the leadership levels of the existing political parties with their leadership. Maybe. But so I think I would encourage a situation that maybe this conversation and the by-election like Serere and the dilemmas you raise, become a challenge to us political leaders that, yes, not only do we have conversations, but that we should take these things much more strategically. I will go back again to Grigori, that look, this business of taking it usually beyond self, and usually sometimes beyond even our individual parties, and more about the country and the institutions we're seeking to build, the consensus we're seeking to build, the cultures we're seeking to build. That once in a while, we may desire to lose, in our chauvinist individual or party way, but allow the process to gain, if it is to build the culture and confidence for the bigger picture.
All right, thank you. Just, Sarah, as we take a short commercial break, my question is around your earlier statement. Worldwide, even in modern democracies like the UK, the Conservative Party will field a candidate each and every election. You go to the USA, the Democrats will field a candidate for president each and every single election. So isn't it rather, I don't say unfair, but isn't it you playing too easy to assume that because the NRM has all these numbers in parliament, then they should now begin to, give out these...
No. Yes, Moses,
Isn't
I'm not saying
to,
they should give out. I'm saying they should stop the irregularities and thuggery in elections. Yes. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
And despair of life and death, yes.
Whereas in a general election, for example, it's common knowledge that the last elections, general elections, might not have been won by Museveni. You get the National Tare Center, you feed it with the UPDF generals, the top police, top prisons, as if they are people they are waiting to usher in their custody. What business? You broke election observers. Our teams are arrested. You cut off internet. What ghost are you running away from? Popularity? You are shying away from your popularity. So you have electoral commission which printed results their own on their website, and the next day they say those are fake. We are putting them down. So who gave them the fake result? Can they tell this country? So you have all these anomalies with violence, killings. The November 18, 19th killings in Kampala are unaccounted for. No single arrest. You have all this madness in an exercise you call election, with zero transparency, with zero credibility. You have declared yourself the winner. You have more than 60% of MPs. What are you now chasing in a by-election? Yeah. Why don't you act normal? So that if you win, well and good. If you lose, you let the democracy be. That is my point.
Oh, okay.
And just because you're closing, that I know a senior member of the Electoral Commission, Sarah, who not in the Simon's team in the previous by-elections, resigned on principle, resigned his position than alter figures in a by-election, in a particular by-election in this country. This gentleman resigned. Young, fantastic, decent citizen. He's alive. He's doing well. He's able to look after himself. There is life outside some of these tiny little institutional things. Oh, he's a fantastic gentleman. I regard him.
It's also telling that a party that is in power and he has got more than 70% of MPs in parliament that it acts in a desperate manner to ensure
Over one seat.
over one seat. That tells you something.
Yeah.
It shows you the state of their lack of confidence in the support base in the country. Because this is a psychological warfare, basically, to maintain or maintain a facade that this party is going nowhere.
Yeah.
Is mass.
Because if they had
By all
confidence,
means.
if they had confidence, if they believed that actually they can win an election in a free, fair, transparent manner, where there's only one seat at a time during by-election, they wouldn't act desperate the way they do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of this first phase of the conversation. To the viewers, we hope that you are loving this. There is a comment section below this video. Give us your comments. Let us know what you think. But above all, stay with us. See you shortly after this commercial break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Thank you for keeping it with us. Well, that was phase one. Phase two shall focus on the NUP Mengo relation. We know that NUP only represents the vast other political parties, the NRM, the ANT, among others who have taken special interest in building a strong relationship with the Mengo establishment, of the oligarchs, for lack of a better word. And General, let me just begin with you. We have seen the NRM visit the Katikiro of Uganda. We have seen NUP visiting this week. Has ANT made a visit as well, a courtesy visit, as they call it?
Last year. We did that last year as part of our program of outreach. We visited Mengo because we determined that we needed to visit all cultural institutions. And we started with Kampala. That's where there's a concentration of many of the institutions. So besides the Mengo, we visited all the religious institutions. Oluwaga, Namirembe, Namungona, Orthodox, Makerere, Seventh-day Adventist, Chibuli, Old Kampala, the Tablik sect in Nakasero, Catholic, the Oluwaga, I think I've mentioned that. And when we roll out and go up country, we intend to meet the cultural institutions. As a young party, we thought it was necessary for us to do these outreach programs. One, for the leaders of the different institutions to understand who we are, what we stand for. And also in the event that we take power, that they know where we stand in regard to cultural institutions, in regard to religious institutions. And we found it quite beneficial in the sense that most times they may know you through what they read in papers, as it's different when you make outreach and you have conversations and they ask questions and you respond. These are influential institutions, the religious, the cultural. They have got their own space in which they wield influence over the population. people are not only political animals, but they're also, in a sense, they're cultural, they're religious. So the human being is at the center of the interaction with the different actors. We are political actors, they are religious actors, others are cultural actors, but it's the citizen who is at the center. So we must all interact around that. And more so, like in the case of Mengo 1, the Buganda Kingdom.
Did you accord a special treatment in your outreach to Mengo? Did you, I mean, was your outreach to Mengo much more specific? Was it special in any way? Or it was just like any other outreach you did to other institutions?
Mengo was, being in terms of the cultural institution, is the one where we have made a visit so far. All the other institutions we visited were religious.
Okay.
Because of location. All these are based in Kampala. And we have not yet gone out of Kampala yet. But when the moment you go out of Kampala, that's where the cultural institutions are. You know, like a meeting like the Ruot, Achana, you'd have to go to Gulu.
Yes.
If you are going to meet the Mukama of Bunyoro, you'd have to go to Masindi. If you are going to meet the Mukama of Toro, you'd have to go to Potro. So these are country, and we'll be doing outreaches when we are visiting those regions. But for us as a young party, basically is for them to understand who we are. What do we stand for? But also specifically like Mengo, Buganda Kingdom having its seat in Kampala, which also happens to be the seat of the central government. It is unique in a sense because the centrality of the Uganda Kingdom, but also being the longest in terms of existence, more or less, I think 600 plus years, and going through 60 years of mismanagement of politics also creates its own dynamic. Because human beings, being who we are, in a state of frustration, we normally gravitate towards what is mostly the institutions where there are emotional attachments for solace, but also as basis for counter-organization. And that's why you find that in situations where politics has gone wrong in a society, people who ordinarily would be associating in terms, for example, of cultural institutions, where in a normal situation, the attachments would be only cultural. But when there is a state of instability and their grievances which are not being attended to politically, now cultural institutions go beyond the culture, they also spill over into politics. Similarly, religious institutions. But when you get to countries where steadily the governance is rooted on a foundation of good governance principles, where a citizen can access services, where a citizen can access justice, where a citizen can access equality before the law in accessing whatever they deserve to access, being taxpayers. They will remain attached to cultural institutions in terms of culture. They'll be attached to religious institutions in terms of their spiritual welfare. But politically, you'll find that the concentration of the resolution of issues most times will be in the political arena. Here, there's a mixture, because we've gone through 60 years of mismanagement politically. So the cultural, the religious, all are mixed up in the politics. It will only take steady management of a team of leaders who will be acting as a team in concert and moving the country back on good governance principles over a period of time than when you find people get disentangled from the religious, from the cultural, and then they focus mostly on the centrality of the political issues in the arena of politics. That's going to be a process. Only people who are, skilled and also who are able to disentangle these issues in their minds and take the country on a correct path consistently for a period of time, that's when you find that there'll be no mercy in terms of where people pay attention. If they are in a religious institution, they go there and engage in the spiritual matters. If they go to the cultural institution, they go there because of the cultural values they subscribe to and all that.
And
then when it comes to politics, you find that all of them now are concentrating on issues.
Yeah.
Right now, it's an area of deep controversy.
Wow, very good analysis there. Doctor, the first Buganda crisis of 1955 was partly because Buganda was demanding for some status. They were demanding for a privileged status. And this led even to the Lancaster Conference, where Buganda still insisted that they demand to have a much more privileged status in Uganda. So just as we look at the politics unfolding today, is Buganda where it is because of some historical factors that we might not admit, but political parties would give it much more attention? Even when they give the rest attention, I think they would give Buganda a much more critical eye.
Yeah. Moses, first of all, I want
the historical factors.
Yes, I want to associate myself with the comments made by Muntu, the submission on Buganda Kingdom. But in addition to that, I want to add that today, Buganda Kingdom is the largest kingdom in present-day East Africa, not just Uganda. So it pulls the capacity of area in terms of, yes, geographical area. It has the highest population. It controls the highest income contribution in the country. Although the income does not go to the kingdom, it comes to central government. But even it as an entity, the kingdom, it has capacity to generate its own resources and run its business with zero contribution from central government, unlike other kingdoms that are demanding for salaries and other kinds from central government. So that gives them a bit more of independence. In terms of the power they pull, I think they pull the highest invisible power in this country. They are not just a seat of the capital in Uganda, they are also a seat of the heads of Church of Uganda, Catholic Church, and the Muslim Church. So they pull all these headquarters. So, but all that contributes to their power. In terms of land, I know that they are still demanding part of land and titles from government. But the people seated on Kabaka's land, Baganda and non-Baganda, that pay Busuru tax to the kingdom, however meager it might be, it's a sense of authority. Because you know that I have to take my land to Uganda Land Board, and your existence is dependent or connected to them. It is the only kingdom collecting such tax.
But hasn't Uganda Land Commission overridden its powers?
Uganda Land Commission controls its properties. It has its own land board. It has nothing to do with the Uganda Land Commission, and there is no way you can overrule their powers. I know that previously, because of political manipulation, so that's how Uganda Kingdom registered Uganda Land Board as a trustee of their land as a kingdom, and a seat that then administers kingdom land. The central government cannot come into that. They can't. So, and it's the only kingdom with such power, controlling land as a single largest, as the largest factor of production. And as a means of existence. Because how many people's homes are seated on Uganda land, where you purchase, if you purchase Chubanja, you pay very little money compared to land, titled land. And then you keep paying Usuru over that Chubanja land. That is power. That is control of a means of production that they still control today. But going to the 1995 crisis, you had that controversy, and Joe will come in handy on this. You had that controversy of power centers. But before that, Buganda Kingdom received instruments of independence from the British before Uganda government. On the eve of independence, it's the independence of Uganda. That controversy that really it took us time to deal with as a country, a state within a state. Because why was it necessary for the British to give instruments of independence to an entity within a geographical territory of a country that will receive independence the next day? That was the deliberate disruption. I know that I have really recognized the importance of Uganda, but that act was a deliberate disruption of our independence. And I don't know whether it was done in good faith. I don't think. So, and it took us time to deal with.
Yeah.
But away from that, Uganda, wields its own power on the grounds that I have described. The royalty of Uganda. I come from Ankole, maybe as a disclaimer, where really we don't have a kingdom out of so many political distortions.
You guys, man.
We don't.
Okay.
But some other areas have. Then the other areas who have kingdoms without a culture, these UPDF things that are being installed, which is also a further, distortion of our culture. But the reality of Uganda to their king, the act of, even prostrating, and it is power, invisible power, that you can't wish away. And when Uganda Kingdom speaks, the country catches a cough.
Okay, let me hear from someone who belongs to a political party that has from time immemorial disagreed with the whole monarchy system. And I think President Obote, towards independence, he was of the view that Uganda should be a republican state, a unitary state, whereas the kingdom was advancing the monarchy interests. And I think that led further into the 1966 Uganda crisis. But Joseph Ochieno, because what Sarah represents to us is hegemony, a powerful monarchy in the country, all right, which I believe the UPC was trying to decentralize earlier on, that let's have a unitary country and things like that. So if we were to review some of these things to create, I don't say a bipolar power balance in the country, but where there is fairly distributed power across the country and not just Uganda having, to control all this power. What are some of the things that we need to look at? Is it the land law? Is it, I don't know, the my law?
No, I'll not legalize it, except to politically contextualize and build on from what Sarah says. But just to dismiss the idea that UPC and Uganda have always had antagonistic relationships, we haven't. In fact, as political parties, the political party that the enemies of Uganda is DP. And DP is the political enemy of Uganda. But once we had problems in 1966, political parties, again, to their credit, that's what political parties do. You use every opportune moment to hit at the other opponent, except if you don't break their neck, or in this case, you don't tell lies. So no, so it's DP, not UPC. But that said, then I want to also say this, that Uganda is actually the most established as an identity, as a nation, in terms of evolution, possibly the most advanced mini near nation state on its own, for argument's sake, in the absence of colonial powers coming in within the region. And so they know that. So they had developed a government, they had developed a culture, they had developed a language, they had developed systems and structures that in the absence of any other external influence would be akin to nation state. So Uganda state is almost a near complete state. Of course, the other emergent nation states, as we'd call them, would be the identities around Busoga, possibly Bunyoro, Toro, and calling neither here nor there. A particular core section of Bahima would have a strong view and present themselves like special Bachwezi, and that they're possibly earlier than the Jews in terms of this establishment. So it's neither here nor there. But so that sort of is Buganda. I know part of your concern is why political parties and political leaders go there. I think my two colleagues have said, no, it's the largest nation state in terms of the population. So so they're that very influential. But number two, as Sarah says, when the central government sneezes, when Baganda woke up and said they're going to rally around Robert Chagulanyi Museveni, the guy nearly retired naturally in bed, naturally, so you can get the point. But no, so that is it. Look, Buganda lost opportunities in its relationship with Uganda People's Congress. It is not UPC that caused it. In fact, leading to independence, Milton Obote, for Ugandan national political reasons, not ideological in terms of our relationship with Buganda, had recognized the reality that Buganda is a nation, Buganda is a community, Buganda is an identity, Buganda is the largest identity and nation state in Uganda. The broader national Uganda will have to live with Batwa, Baganda, Jopadola, and indeed Batoro. So that was an imperative reality. In fact, he emphasized the fact that Baganda will have to live side by side with Banyoro. And so therefore, the conflict between Buganda and Banyoro will have to be resolved in the broader national interest of Uganda. To the extent, therefore, that Milton Obote went on and on and on until he sort of burned his fingers. And part of the burning of the fingers was many of those big decisions at Lancaster House that you're referring to, where he, meaning UPC, played the big man, the big person interest thing in building the complicated nation state that Sarah is talking about. Buganda as a mini independence nation state. Don't forget, Buganda wanted its independence, did not want Uganda's independence. In part, answers you. They wanted the independence, they did not want Uganda independence. DP later realized that, well, for them to reclaim power, DP is historically Catholic marginalized grouping in Buganda, and so had their own views very much about the relationship between DP, the political party, and the power of Mengo establishment before KY. So it was possibly in their own interest to say that, well, an independent Buganda in which the king of Buganda is de facto new president of Buganda, the DP would be in trouble. So they didn't want that. So independence, for national independence, was a relief to them. And so it is not surprising that at independence, DP would have desired that a formation of a post-independence government in which they were in leadership, they would have very little to do with Mengo. And one of the missing links is that what would have happened had DP won the 1962 elections? What would have been the relation between DP and Mengo? It would have been worse than what eventually ended up between UPC and Mengo. And then, of course, my more realistic one is, I wish DP had accepted to join the government of national unity, which UPC had offered in 1962, to seat DP as a political party, UPC as the leading political party, governing political party, the majority political party governing in the national unity government, and KY as the political party representing Mengo, building a consensus, building a new nation, and dealing with some of the dynamics where Buganda as a kingdom is a cultural institution with relative power, decentralized, mini devolution of power, loose federal, much more advanced federal than Bunyoro and other kingdoms, very complicated. How would it have worked? Our view in UPC at the time was that it was actually possible to recognize the state of Buganda, as it were, that in as long as Buganda culturally recognized its privileges and responsibility for its citizens, and recognized that it was part of the Republic of Uganda, for which the mandate of governance had gone to an elected leader, in this case the Prime Minister, who was UPC, could have been DP, could have been their own KY, things would have been okay. That worked up to 1966, but it had started faltering by 1962, 2 years after independence. Why? Because Buganda was not satisfied with this power, they wanted still to go and claim a little bit of Bunyoro, part of which they had occupied by force with the help of the British. And of course, UPC said no, as usual for us, we always very much about equity and justice. And on this occasion, we said no. Because Lancaster had asked for a referendum, let a referendum take place so that the majority of the people in the respective contested counties should determine freely which side they belong. That was a lost opportunity. It came out as a result. Buganda took it wrongly. 1966 was not in, as you know, I keep on saying on this program, was not UPC going to attack Mengo. It was Mengo fighting the Republic of Uganda, as it were. So it was not about chasing UPC out of Kampala. It was not chasing Obote out of Kampala. It was chasing central government out of Kampala because Buganda wanted to reclaim its other authority in Buganda, by the way. If that happened, I don't think they're going to conquer Jinja. They're not going to come to Nyabushozi. They were likely going to retain their independence of Uganda. And the Ugandans today and young Baganda today need to know this. Going forward, therefore, which is part of your question, where are we notwithstanding all those historical things? I think we must recognize that Buganda as a nation is the largest. Luganda, Sarah, sometimes advances this argument that there's no reason why Luganda should not be far much more advanced.
I always think that whenever you go in any part of Uganda, you find somebody who speaks Luganda. It's the dominant local language.
I'm advancing your point.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the
so
country.
Sarah, recognizing exactly that, always argues in various fora that actually Luganda should be our official national cultural language, primarily for that. And most Ugandans would agree with that for the reasons given. So a diverse Uganda, to this extent that Gregory is sort of hinting that Uganda in which we are tolerant in terms of identity, Uganda which is advanced to a level in which services, governments are responsible, services are offered without prejudice to your identity, location, and things like that. Would be Uganda in which Buganda would enjoy its privileged status like KwaZulu Natal enjoys in South Africa. The English, by and large, enjoy their status in Britain, and the Welsh and Scottish recognize the very strong identities. But it's a nation state and democratic nation state. An English person can go and live somewhere in Cardiff, just as a Scotsman would come ahead and speak in the Scottish language and in South of England and do whatever they want to do. And it's actually normal business as usual. So why do political leaders go there? Beyond what Gregory said, naturally political parties will want gateways, entry points to possible elective elective communities, meaning voters. In Muganda's case, of course, the seat is via Mengo. In UPC's case, I was officially responsible for initiating a big conversation, Gregory and Sarah, way back in the 90s, to reclaim the space between then late President Milton Obote and UPC and Mengo and the kingdom. And part of it was about trying to establish the truth about what exactly happened. I'm delighted to say on this program that Milton Obote was able to have a conversation with a close family member of the late Sir Edward and in my presence. And some of that conversation woke up the reality that actually some of what is being talked about are lies. And so it's possible for us to live together in harmony. So, no, there is no reason why political parties and leaders don't visit Mengo, and there's no reason why Mengo does not see itself as an integral part of the Republic of Uganda. And then as long as they do that, I don't think it would be a problem. I have suggested, for instance, that UPC is Uganda's best friend because we offered them the best deal at independence. And since that time, Nere went to the bush, Museveni came, told them a bit of lies, whereas he instead actually is hunted down many of their citizens there. That's the biggest victims today. Quick point on this.
Yeah.
Milton Obote, I keep on saying it, but just for historical reasons. Sometimes I know it bores certain people, but people have to live with some of those things because they're very decent facts. I met a retired professor in Bristol, sir, and he was is a Muzungu who was then a lecturer in Makerere University, and one of the founding young leaders in Uganda People's Congress, the progressive-led political party of the left. And he said that at early independence, when some of these issues were beginning to come up, they made suggestions. He never told me what he died before. I planned to go back to him. They made certain suggestions to the president at the time on how to deal with the question of Uganda and other conflicting identity nations. And what I told him that, Kenneth, some of you people will go back to England, you know, but for us, we will have to leave. We will remain here.
Yeah.
So as Ugandans, we'll have to find a way to accept to live together as Ugandans.
Yeah.
And this man was telling me, this is 2007, and with a heavy heart in Muzungu, saying that maybe perhaps we have had elements of lost opportunities in the past in terms of living together. May these conversations continue. May these visitations continue. May they not be opportunistic. May they be fact-finding and getting to know one another. May they be visits to chiefdoms, including in Gongara by political party leaders. For me, I'll receive you down there. I also come from a royal family. May us build, let it be possible that we build cohesion. But a quick point to Uganda.
Yeah.
They also need to learn from other cultural institutions outside Uganda. What are the Bazulu saying? What are those other powerful communities in West Africa? What are those other kind of chieftains saying?
Yeah.
What is it that is different that they're demanding? Because I think Uganda also needs to come out to be very clear. Is it a secessionist thing or is it a working together thing? For me, as someone who's an expert in many both and quite committed to the Republic of Uganda and the Pan-Africanist, I'm here to support and help. And I hope we're able to find a way forward on this, not to get political advantage, but to build the relationships together as a people going forward.
Wow, thank you. General, let me get to you. Sarah made a statement, and Joseph did substantiate it, that when Uganda coughs, central government gets a sneeze. Hypothetically speaking, if you had become president, I'm not sure you would enjoy such a situation where there is a group that can literally control your course of action. And this goes back to 1966 when the Luchiko of Uganda resolved that the central government must leave Buganda land. And that's what led to the 1966 crisis, of course, among other reasons. So I don't know, if you were to govern this country, would you be comfortable with that? And if not, what are some of the things you would do to create a power balance across the country?
To successfully build a stable foundation for any society, more so when you find that there are different interests within that society, you have to build politics based on transparent engagements. You recognize that there are different interests. You create an environment where there are open, transparent engagements. You may not agree 100%, but even where there are disagreements, if you are honest brokers, there's nothing that you cannot resolve.
Yeah.
The problem we've had for the last 60 years is politics of deception and lies.
Yeah.
And it's like it's been normalized almost. Actually, when you're an honest man or woman in politics, people think that you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because they think that to be a successful politician, you must lie, you must be deceptive. And that's now deeply rooted in our culture. So any team of people that is going to change the culture of politics in this country, that's one of the things that they must deal with. You know, that you sit on a table and you bring your cards out, you say, what is your interest? And you recognize that for there to be success at the national level, that you must, understand, because once you ensure that there is justice, once they ensure that there is fair play, once they ensure that there is equality before the law, once they ensure that there are equal opportunities, I do not see how anybody can mobilize around any other form of grievance and succeed. But the moment you don't deal with those, even something that is secondary can be used by any opportunist to galvanize a community on an emotional basis. It can be religious, it can be ethnic, it can be anything else. And something that is secondary becomes primary. For it to succeed or to be generated to a level of conflict, You need to look at the culture of governance. You need to look at the methods of work of the leaders. What kind of governance culture is in existence in a country? And you know, now Gen 7 has perfected, you know, manipulation and deception as a form of governance, as a tool for governance. And any group that is going to reverse all that, well, first it must recognize the dominant culture now we are in now, and build a team of leaders who will work in concert over a period of time to start establishing a new foundation on the basis of which there can be good governance. For people to first trust that one, nobody is deceiving the other. That when you agree, you move together. When there's disagreement, each one will know where they stand. And also build the skills within the leaders in political parties, in those who are involved in politics, for the skills to detect where there's a likely source of conflict, engage in conflict management and resolution. There's no potential conflict that cannot be resolved. If you apply honesty, if you apply transparency in discussing issues around common interests. Because there's no religious institution, there's no ethnic group that can live on its own. It's not possible. People are interconnected. There is Uganda as a geographical entity. So people, first and foremost, would need to recognize that, you know what, we have got maybe different interests of whatever nature it is, but we live in one space. So how do we put in place the governance structures and also build a culture on the basis of which we discuss different interests, how we advance the national interest, and how do the component parts of the national interest, how do people, you know, feel that they are part and parcel of the development process? How are they benefiting from the development process? Because the moment you create that and you find that people don't feel marginalized, there is nobody who can mobilize any ethnic group or mobilize any religious group to a point where they can generate interest. Just simply not possible. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Fair enough. Doctor, as we discuss Mengo entirely, Mengo has come out in the past to demand for federal. As a lawyer, perhaps you have constitutional interests. Is this something that, okay, what is your evaluation? Do you think federal is something that should be considered as a part of our governance?
You know, during the constitutional making process, the demand for federal or federalism was captured as a popular demand of the people. Actually, I think there were 3 popular issues in the Dutch report or Dutch Commission report. Term limits, so that we have orderly transition of power, federal, and the issue of power belonging to the people, and land. I think those were, and then land, federal, and the multi-party politics became now contentious in the CA debate and almost were unresolved by the CA. Land question was resolved in the constitution, but the supporting laws still are problematic, and we are still demanding for land reforms. But the question of federal and the multi-party politics was unresolved. The issue of orderly succession of power, which had been resolved by CA, now stands unresolved. So that's how CA.
Reversal.
Yeah, it was reversed for the benefit of an individual. So that's how the legal status is. But when you come to reality, the Constituent Assembly adopted decentralization. But we are recentralizing. And the decentralization envisaged by the framers of the Constitution has not been realized. We now send budgets from the center, The central government recruits chief administrative officers. We are failing to decentralize in actual sense. And it's only the last time, this parliament a few months ago, that voted that districts should retain 20% of their domestic collections. So when you look at the arguments advanced then, and we have since had the debate of the Nile Republic, the people that wanted secession from the north, from the Nile going up, because of the conflict that was later resolved after 20 years. So when you look at the agitation for secession, if today you looked at the crisis of elections, failure to conduct elections, the crisis of corruption, the crisis of poor service delivery, if you asked each region if they wanted to control their resources and do their services, I think the whole country would vote for federalism today because of the mess at the center. So part of the agitation is so my point is that it is not a particular demand by Buganda, although they've been passionate in agitating for it. But if you went, for example, to people in Kanungu, that hospital where our friend Honorable Badiomus failed to get Panadol and oxygen, if you asked them to retain their taxes and have a functional hospital, they would all vote yes. So those are some of the issues that want people to run away from the center because of crisis of governance at the center.
Okay, fair enough. Joseph, as we move towards the last 10 minutes of this conversation, the relevance of cultural institutions. I have had a school of thought that has suggested that cultural institutions have been a breeding ground for lack of national consensus. That because you have a very strong cultural institution in Buganda, you have another in Ankole, then people organize themselves according to that kind of culture and forget that we are Ugandans. So I don't know, what is your view? If you were to maybe reconsider restructuring cultural institutions, would you do it any differently, or they're perfect just the way they are? And this you answer with the national unity in sight, with national consensus.
In UPC, we start from national unity and Republican, values at the center. We don't do anything else all the time. And so anyway, on a serious note, cultural institutions per se are not a problem. I'm just a little bit concerned that today, the manner in which cultural institutions are emerging around the country is that I am about to declare myself the king of Koi Pawangara clan. Because Koi Pawangara clan is the clan for which a guy called Majanga, giant fighter, was the mother was from, and we granted them the power, mighty power of fighting, to the extent that when the Japs went to support Busoga against Buganda invasion, we basically just gave them a beating. So Buganda was defeated and Busoga claimed back its space. So we can go on and on and on about these things. No, I think the manner in which Mr. Museveni has done it is rather cheeky, and is something which may be a center for other conflicts in future, including some of the things that I see in my own Tororo.
You have a king.
Because Joseph, why I ask is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the UPC government abolished kingdoms. Is that correct?
I'm coming to that. Yes, we
then
did.
The NRM restored them.
I don't know what they restored. The NRM did not restore what was there in 1966. They couldn't.
No, but you abolished them.
You're asking me a question, I'm giving you an answer.
Okay.
And I was actually building it for you in such a manner that we're able to consider the future. The current set of kingdoms in which even you are actually Chief Ruwadachana, do you kneel for him? They didn't exist then. On a serious point, the cultural institutions that existed at independence, leading to independence, were actually fantastic cultural institutions, to the extent that these institutions respected other identities and there were no problems. One. Number two, leading to independence, most of the campaigns, the Lango chief, the Bunyoro kings, and all this, there were absolutely no problems. These guys managed to serve their communities culturally, engage at a broader national level with political leaders, including some of them in polity, to ensure that we gained our independence. And even at independence, we had no problems. Yes, the Busoga Buganda one was where the king of Busoga was the vice president of UPC and he wanted to become the first president. That is following the constitutional amendments in 1963. And it was actually bad blood in UPC. And the king of Buganda, in this case, took the day where UPC considered that it was appropriate for various other reasons that we supported the king of Buganda, and where DP supported the Chabazinga of Busoga against their own Buganda king for many other political reasons. No, I do not necessarily think that these institutions per se fund any anti-nationalist values. Part of the contradiction is where we create these as fiefdoms, and including where they don't exist. And Sarah has just broken news that there's no kingdom in King Inankole, but there is one in so many other places I don't want to name that did not exist until the other week. You know, that sort of is part of the problem. So Mr. Museveni has politicized this. So why I'm playing around with it is to say that we should discuss all these other things and still come back to the reality that cultural institutions are institutions that need to be respected, and cultural leaders should make sure that once in a while they also see that when the public hospitals that should be catered for by the central government and they're not, that those brown dubious envelopes that Mr. Museveni gives them at night should not be sufficient for them to forget about their subjects. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Long term, I am a Republican. Long term, I'm a Pan-Africanist. We are risking some contradictions where we claim broader one government for Africa, and we are claiming our own fiefdom entities, and so much that we want to break the legs of one another as neighbors. In many cases, some of us have double bloods from different identities, and yet we want to break it like this. Yeah. Those are some of the problems. No, on a serious note, yes, things happened in 1966 because Buganda wanted to claim total independence, and the contradictions happened in such a manner that central government exerted its authority with the result which was not particularly desirable. And yes, at the end of the day, 1967, there's a huge debate in parliament across all political parties, by the way, and it was found that the necessary thing to do was to take central government kingdoms out if we were to be a future republic nation state at the time. The manner in which it was done, meaning the extent to which it was done, when I look back, I wonder, perhaps did we need to be able to leave them and simply say not engage in politics? The bad blood that had already been found and the evidence of how particularly Buganda had behaved was such that you could not do so and maintain the Buganda state as it was at the time and not expect another battle in a few months' time. And so then do you say you let the others okay and then ban Buganda? I think the difficult decision, and I had a conversation with Milton about it, the difficult decision was that no, I think for the moment, if we are to build a Republican nation going forward, it was the right thing to do. And final quick point, Gregory referred to many of these things as services. As in 1980, after 1980 elections, and then the UPC coming into government and delivering the new big services that we did. Actually, by 1984-85, in Buganda, notwithstanding the fact that Buganda Kingdom and a certain group of Buganda were supporting Museveni in the bushes, really the kingdom thing was not necessarily the big thing. So Gregory is right. When there is generally an open democratic government offering services to people, including in Buganda, the Buganda will respect their king, they will kneel for their king, and they should be allowed to do everything they want to do for their king. But I
At the same
think
time-
it will become a secondary thing for them when they're receiving everything else, and I don't see why they would not want to engage with central government as the governing body and the cultural institution as merely the cultural institution. And when they do that, I don't see why it should not be allowed in Buganda, in Toro, and unfortunately in Ankole, it doesn't exist. But wherever else it does exist, it should continue.
All right, thank you. Our time is fast spent. We need to be out of here in the next 5 minutes. But I will invite parting shots. I'm beginning with the General. But General, as you give us your parting shots, I would love you to throw a hint on how funding of cultural institutions by central government affects their independence.
Yeah.
Just a comment on that, then we give us your parting shots as I move towards Joseph.
The unfortunate thing is that General Museveni has established that practice for short-term considerations on opportunistic grounds for purposes of control and influence and manipulation. Because one, I don't think it's backed by any law in the first place. It's just him, just giving. There needed to have been a debate, I think, so that even if it was to be established, that there would be need to build a consensus, because there are many communities in this country that don't have cultural institutions.
Yeah.
And they pay taxes. So there need to be engagement across board and say, what do we need to do in these circumstances?
Yeah.
Of course, there are cultural institutions that have got their own economic base. I mean, like Uganda, they can fund themselves. They don't have to even have money from government. There are also other kingdoms which had land, and if they engage in economic activities, they can sustain themselves. The question would be in areas where they don't have any resources. That means they would have to fall back on the people who support the cultural institutions from those areas. But this needs to be exposed to discussion, and it will need to be regularized. There will need to be an understanding from people who pay taxes and say, should your taxes be used to support these institutions or not? But General Museveni, one thing he has mastered is manipulating the different interest groups. I believe that the next group of leaders that gets in will need to subject some of these issues to open and transparent discussions so that decisions are taken and they are institutionalized. It doesn't remain one individual. Museveni has literally manipulated all nature of institutions, cultural, religious, and it's a problem in our governance culture. So I would like to thank you again for inviting me to participate in this discussion, and also to thank those who are viewing, and also to recognize that we are in a very, very difficult situation as a country. I think one of the most frightening things is the extent to which people are losing hope and getting in a state of hopelessness. I think all of us need to understand that losing hope is one of the most dangerous things that any society can find itself in. We need, in spite of the difficulties that we face, more so people who are at different levels of leadership, whether political, whether cultural, whether religious, that we must maintain hope within the population. Because when people lose hope and they get frustrated, a country can slide and reach a point where it can implode. And then the ramifications of that can be very dangerous for a country. Our main task is, as we fight those of us who want to see change, to ensure that we sustain hope, that we keep building it where it no longer exists, and know that change is a constant. Change happens all the time. So as we work to remove this regime, also to keep organizing for the post-regime, because that's another thing which is frightening. It's like people think that General Museveni and NRM at the beginning and then. They are not. They'll get out of the way. We must keep thinking, when this group gets out, how does the next group get in, and it doesn't get sucked in the same vicious cycle that has sucked in literally all governance, all groups that have been in governance. So the new group can chart a new way forward, salvage the country from where it is, the mess in which it is, and start moving it in the correct direction. That needs preparation. I don't think it is correct, the mindset of people who believe that the moment this regime is out, everything will become okay. That's not the way things work. There must be constant organization, constant focus on building for what happens after regime change.
Wow, thank you. Yes, doctor, your last words.
Yeah, I feel like I should have donated my time to General Muntu, but when it speaks here, at times you feel like you don't need to add anything. But on cultural institutions, I think that since they are here with us, we need to use them for development, for positive mobilization of society, and maybe where Uganda stands out. The Katikro has been leading the campaign of Emwani Terimba. So my call is to other cultural institutions. What are they doing to get their people out of poverty? What are they doing to mobilize positively for development? And I will end with the words of Tom Mboya, a great politician for Kenya and Pan-Africanist, who said that tribalism in itself is not evil. We should use tribalism for positive development of countries. So I want to replace tribalism with the culture as centers for citizens' mobilization. And on the by-elections, my call goes to state institutions, electoral commission, police, the army. Uganda has been in democratic confusion because of people who fail to do what they ought to do when they are occupying those offices. You are in those offices today, you will not be there tomorrow. Stop abusing your power.
Yes, Joseph.
Yeah, just to say too that I think I'll start with the by-elections, that I hope that whatever happens across the opposition political parties, that the voters in Serere should focus on real issues, but with a view to doing one thing, making sure that may the best candidate win. But surely I don't know what is special that NRA is going to give to the people of Serere that has failed to give this country in 37 years. So there's no reason why people don't rally around opposition candidates. And while there are two political opposition parties, and while I know that the UPC may be fielding a candidate soon, that the citizens of the Serere deserve the right to get an opportunity to look at men and women who present themselves on merit in terms of what they're presenting, the values that they represent as individuals and political parties that they represent. But whatever happens, they come together and campaign and make sure that no single vote is used to endorse Mr. Museveni's one extra stay in power. But that said, again, on the cultural institutions, my say is this, that may they continue and may many others continue to emerge if they're legitimately so. But let it not be the case that people emerge as cultural leaders, on the basis of brown envelopes, that they sell the rights and mandates of their people to, if you like, permanent slavery with Mr. Museveni. I am yet to do a detailed research to establish how many of these cultural leaders are independent individuals who, when they meet Museveni in their areas, they have the power and saying, you come into my space and on my terms. I think, as my colleagues were suggesting, it is wrong that Nagongera Road, which UPC was supposed to be done in 1989, has not been done, and you're here boasting that you're a ruler of Uganda, and so therefore we instruct our citizens to vote for you. If cultural leaders are doing that, then those cultural leaders are as bad as Mr. Museveni, and they are bad as the guys who enslaved our people. And for me, such cultural leaders do not have a space in our country. But I know cultural institutions are here to stay, and the UPC will support cultural institutions like we did so before, and we will work to make sure that we develop a nation state in which the cultures and institutions of this country are respected, and they do what they're supposed to do for us, for God and my country.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, General. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Joseph, for making the time to be on this week's episode of the Citizens Chat Show. Well, to our viewers, thank you for making company with us this afternoon. The conversation continues on Twitter at #ChatShowUG. Let's follow it up there and give us your thoughts, give us your opinions, but above all, subscribe, like, and follow this YouTube channel. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.